Hi, I'm Shaka Hislop, and you're here at Extra Time TV.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Extra Time TV. This is Andre Soklal, and we have a special guest today, the one, the only Kelvin Jack. Listen, Kelvin, before you do your lovely introduction, folks, if you don't know, and you should know, and I will find you if you don't know, because as a Trinidad Tobago fan, you should know, Kelvin Jack, was one of the players who represented us at the World Cup in 2006, that historical tournament for us. We have some very cool stories with Kelvin as well, and you worked with the national team as well and had a very successful career in Europe. So, Kelvin, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Good to be on the show.
So, Kelvin, obviously this is a pretty interesting time for Trinidad and Tobago football. We have Dwight York at the helm. The buzz is there. It's been a while since there's a buzz about Trinidad and Tobago football. We all know about the well-documented problems, we have, but, we're not going to talk about that too much. We're going to talk about the present now. We recently, the Gold Cup concluded for us, and we ended the last game with a 1-1 draw against Saudi Arabia, and also a 1-1 draw against Haiti. And, well, everybody knows about the USA result, and everybody has their thoughts and opinions, and it's an interesting time because, and we'll go into details as we go along in the conversation, but the interesting thing is between now and then we have the World Cup qualifiers, which are coming up very soon, within 2 or 3 months, maybe less. It's an interesting period for us. So, I'll start things off. What were your thoughts on, the performance of Trinidad and Tobago progression-wise? Because it seems a lot of people have been seeing, growth. But I would love to hear your thoughts as someone who has been there, experienced this progression and campaign before. Let me hear your thoughts.
I felt that there was progression in parts, and I felt that we need to find some type of consistency. And when I say consistency, I mean consistency during the game. So we will have a 5 minute spell where we would play well. We may be possessing the ball well, and then we'll have another spell where we're not defending right. We're not compact. We appear a bit stretched and what have you. So I think one of the areas that the team's struggling with is that consistency.
Yes.
During games.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, a lot of people highlighted, even Dwight York, to be fair to him, in the post-match conferences, folks, you could check those out on the EXTV YouTube channel. We have them there, and extvmedia.com. He did identify there's a lot of work to do, and he said, one of the things he highlighted is that, with the Unity Cup, plus we had World Cup qualifiers and straight into the Gold Cup. And there was a lot of fixtures, playing around the US is very deceptive. A lot of people, there's people who are fans and then people who experience this. And we have a lot of pro players who spoke about this. Even in Europe, even Lionel Messi and players like that, when they head across to the US, moving from state to state, it's the distance, the extreme weather conditions. It's 1 minute it's very hot, then it's very cold. He said a lot of those factors had something to do with the performance as well. So we'll break down the other things, but this is a situation a lot of people are talking about heading into the next World Cup. We're looking at the FIFA Club World Cup now. A lot of these players, to be fair to them, we have a couple, sprinkled in the US and in Europe, but a lot of them play their football in Trinidad and Tobago. So with the gap between the World Cup now and the World Cup qualifiers coming in, what do you think Dwight York needs to do to really get this team ready? Because we have a good chance to make it, mathematically at least.
It's a tricky one in my opinion to really assess, because obviously the players, they most would just be starting their preseason now, I expect. Dwight and his staff not working with the players on a day-to-day basis. He has a very limited time to really implement his philosophy and the way he wants to play and what have you. I think now Dwight would be doing a lot of analysis of the teams that we're going to face, analysis of our own team, of course. What did we do right at the Gold Cup? What do we need to improve on? How could we navigate the games coming up? What are the weaknesses of our opponents? What are the strengths of our opponents? And then just trying to find the best way to play to get a result. So I think that is, what, Dwight and his staff would be doing right now. And it's not going to be easy. because again, it's only a limited, number of days he would have with the boys.
Yeah, correct. And that's why I asked you, because as someone who has experiences as a player, as a coach, and then of playing at the elite level as well, there are many factors that the fans often overlook. I've been on both sides of the coin, having been a fan and then also being around the women's team, and there's so many logistical things and intangible things that people like you would have insight in that we probably would not know. If there's one thing you would highlight in terms of a mental aspect that normally is overlooked in when people have these discussions, that as someone who has experiences that you think we should identify, what do you think that is?
I think I think what could get us a very long way is having a really good team spirit. Yeah, I think that's absolutely vital to have a good team spirit for the team to really come together and think it's us against them. So almost putting themselves in a position where maybe let's prove the public wrong. Maybe the public don't believe in us enough, and many times that could galvanize a team. um, I do agree with you. I think we do have a chance to qualify for the World Cup. It's really not going to be easy. Obviously, we have Jamaica in our section. We have Curacao in our section as well, together with Bermuda. I'm not sure about Bermuda, what they have to offer, really. I do know that Curacao has been an improving team, and I think that started with Clivert when he was their manager, and he's obviously left quite an impression on their football federation, and I think they've gone from strength to strength, and they are tricky opponents, really really tricky opponents. Obviously Jamaica, we know Jamaica quite well. They would know us quite well also, so I think it's going to be a real battle there, as to who would come out on top. Jamaica would feel that they're better than us as well, because they do have quite a strong you know group of individuals, um that play in the English Premier League and play in good leagues. So I think we really do need to have a strong team spirit, and if we have that strong team spirit, and we can have a better quality in the games, we'll have a good chance.
Yes, and I remember just to compare to like when you were doing the campaign for 2006. Bill Sinclair, it started off with Virgil Sinclair and then we ended with Leo. And there were a lot of changes. I remember we didn't start off ideally. And at one point in time, it looked like things were grim. And of course, that's when Leo came in. Russell returned as well, and Dwight, if I'm not mistaken. I'm out there at a lot of those games when, the stadium started to get all empty before they came back. uh, but in just comparing both campaigns now, how important is it? Our first game, if I'm checking correctly, it's supposed to be against Curacao at home. You know that, and I saw it. I remember reading somewhere you mentioned the power of the home stadium and having the home fans there for that first game and getting that result. As someone who was a player before, the involvement of the fans in those types of games and also getting the result. How I know it's crucial, but mentality wise, how important is that?
Yeah, it's crucial that we have the fans behind the team. That could really serve us as a real motivational force and what have you. The players as well, they also need to um give the fans something to really cheer about, by playing with real passion and intensity and what have you. And if we have good fans behind us, we could make the national stadium a fortress, and we could pick up points there. It's again, I keep stressing it, and everyone I've spoken to, I need to say that it's not going to be easy, to compare the two campaigns in 2006 and 2026. And with all due respect to the players now, we're talking about, Dwight York was in our team, fantastic player, won the treble. We're talking about, Russell Latipi, unbelievable talent, a top player. Stone John, the greatest goal scorer we've ever had. Marvin Andrews, who was playing at a top level. He won a Scottish Premier League title with Rangers in Scotland. We talk on people like Jason Scotland, who was on the bench, Colin Samuel, some really top players. So in terms of comparing the two teams, our team player for player, I don't think anyone would disagree if we say that there was more talent on the 2016. But where the 2026 team could probably try to bridge the gap is by having that real unity, having a really high work ethic, and of course you need equality, but maybe with this section you may be able to get away with it. We saw in the Gold Cup that we were lacking in quality against the three teams that we played. Obviously we were lacking in quality to really affect the game against the United States. Haiti, they were a problem. Their athleticism, their speed, they play with real passion as well. They were a big problem for us. Even when they went down to 10 men, they were difficult because of their sheer power and athleticism. And of course, Saudi Arabia, they are really, really tidy team. And, they are a good team. To think that they were also missing players who were, at the Club World Cup as well. It shows you that they have quality. And let's not forget, they beat Argentina in the first game of the last World Cup. We managed to get a draw there, but let's be honest, Saudi Arabia, they were better. They were better on the day, and but we stuck at it. That's the main thing. We stuck at it. And we got something from the game. So it's tricky.
Mhm.
It's really, really tricky, Andre, for us to think just because we have that extra spot that automatically we're going to qualify. We need bits of quality. We need Levi to deliver. We need Sealy to deliver. We need these boys, spice up. We need these boys to really step up and be consistent. And it's not just consistent game to game. I keep saying in the game itself, we need consistency in the game itself. We need these boys to affect the game on a consistent basis during the game. Obviously, Kevin Molino as well. It's too many times we're seeing a bit of quality for 3-4 minutes, and then we become really, really sloppy. And then that period when we are sloppy, that is when we could concede, or that is when we've given the other team a lift because we weren't defending right, or we weren't compact and what have you. So we just need that consistency. And I'm sure, listen, what I'm saying here, I'm absolutely certain Dwight would know. He has a fantastic football brain. Dwight, Russell, Derek, all of the staff, they would know exactly what we need to improve on. So I don't really have to be saying, they know exactly what the team needs to improve on.
Correct, and that's why I like to speak with people like yourself and Shaka and so on, because you have the generic kind of analysis where people just nitpick the results, and there's so much more to it than just okay, it was 1-1. The expectations, you kind of covered a lot of my questions beforehand. That's why I'm glad you're here. One thing I was going to highlight is the comparison of both squads. I know a lot of people, it's naturally nostalgic for people to compare both squads because of the success in 2006. And sometimes, the expectations from, just a surface perspective, you think, okay, it's probably easier this time, and it really isn't. And I'm glad you broke it down that way because, player for player, and like I said, no disrespect, the majority of the 2006 squad were playing in Europe.
Yeah.
And they were playing at a high level as well. Versus we have, obviously Levi is outside maybe Molino, but Levi is probably our standout player in that aspect. I mean, we have Sealy who's in the MLS, who's having a good time, but in comparison to then. So that's why, like, when I had this discussion, we have a lot of new viewers, which I appreciate, by the way. They've been supporting the show. We have a new bunch at upsurge of new fans. That's why we're having this, so we could give them, the best knowledge we can and best insight, because heading into these games is going to be very difficult. And you rightfully said this. I'm sure everything that we are discussing, I did it with Andre as well. Andre Samuel was on before. We were talking about I'm sure he knows these things, and I emphasize this, and I'm glad you're saying it as well, because I repeat it all the time. A lot of people don't understand sometimes that, at international versus club level is so different in terms of preparation. You don't get to see the players every day and work with them every day. We don't have those very high level networks like those big nations have. Sometimes, we are spoilt as viewers where we look at television and we see and we play video games like FIFA. And, it's not as simple as just calling up the right players. There's so much things that have to go on behind the scenes in preparations. And as you would know, Kelvin, our international window is very small. When you cater for the traveling, just moving around the hotels, you just have a couple training sessions and meetings, and there's only so much you could really implement in a short period of time. And I wrote a post on extvmedia.com how the Unity Cup, the qualifiers, and the Gold Cup may have been a blessing in disguise for York. And you could let me know what you think about this. My theory is, and you could let me know if you agree or disagree, is that it may have been a blessing in disguise, or not even a disguise, a blessing, because while the teams were, the Unity Cup had top level teams, um, plus the congestion. All the teams we played were high quality teams. And under normal circumstances, we'd have to rely on friendlies. And if we get them, it's not easy to get friendlies. That it may have given York a bit of a silver lining in terms of preparation and working with these guys. So maybe when it's time to make decisions coming into the qualifiers, it'll be easier now than if he had to do it under normal circumstances. I mean, you could tell me if you agree or disagree. What do you think?
I do think that the Unity Cup was the perfect preparation for the team, and the Gold Cup as well, because they are competitive games. Trying to to use a friendly and pretend it's the real thing is always difficult, right? So in a competitive environment as the Unity Cup was, I think it was good preparation. In saying that, we played a game and I was present at the game against Ghana, and they just had much more quality than us. The gap was quite big in my opinion. And they looked as though they had another gear. When they felt like going into another gear, they were capable of doing so. Of course, Jamaica as well. In that Unity Cup again, Jamaica, they were better than us. I know the score was 3-2, and many people would look at the score and what have you, but when you look at the game and you really analyze the game, Jamaica, they had much more control of the game, not only by having more of the ball, but in terms of how they defended, better than us. Of course. And then obviously when we got to the Gold Cup, it was a little bit more even, if you want to take away the US game and, in my opinion, the Saudi Arabia game. But that's how football is sometimes. The US, they beat us quite badly, and obviously we drew against Saudi Arabia. But when you really analyze the Saudi Arabia game, they're better. They are better than us, right? And but I must reiterate that I was quite pleased to see that the team was willing to fight, and the intensity was good, which is a real plus. You could see Dwight, trying to urge the boys on and trying to keep concentration levels high and what have you. So I'm just hoping that, the boys are able to execute in a high pressured situation. It's the best time to try to qualify for the World Cup. Let's not forget, Andre, that we finished fourth in each section in 2006, and we were good.
Yep.
We were good, and we finished fourth, and we needed to go in the playoff, right? So these boys have to really seize this moment. They have to seize this moment, because it wouldn't surprise me in the least if it goes back to 32 teams after this World Cup. It wouldn't surprise me. Because what you could have in this World Cup is you'll have some teams, you could have some games where teams are just it's a mismatch, and you could have some quite lopsided scorelines. And if that happens, FIFA may look at it and decide, what, the World Cup itself is losing prestige, and we should revert to 32 teams. So it's a really good opportunity. We need to take it for our own football development and try to get to this tournament. And we need that consistency to do so.
Yes, because everybody, just to go back to 2006, for those who experienced that and understood, we thought it would have been, the catalyst for us to, and Jamaica as well when they got there. As far as both countries, it didn't go how it planned for both countries. Jamaica has made a lot of progress in recent times. It seems like we are heading somewhat in the right direction. Dwight York did bring that buzz back to the team. He is, former Manchester United man, treble winner. So he has that, buzz. The players will look up to him and bring all the best in those players. And, as you rightfully said, this, for folks, if you don't know, this is the first time we'll be having, the expanded World Cup. And it just worked out where it's easier. And I use that with a grain of salt or quotations because it's not really easier, but it's easier than it has been in a long time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it's easy. And, in terms of qualifying, that's why we're having these discussions, because while it is a smaller group and quote unquote easier teams, because we don't have to play the USA, Mexico, and Canada and so on in that hex, which, we usually always kind of get edged out in the last couple of years. This is going to be tough. But in terms of tactics, so obviously Dwight York is trying to impose, I like his quote, he likes to play proactive football. And this is no disrespect to any coaches before. I respect all different tactics. In the past, I know Angus did try to go all defense and keep things tight, which works sometimes, I guess. So, each coach has their philosophy. Dwight York, clearly from, I guess it's Alex Ferguson influence. He has that proactive approach. He wants Trinidad to not be reactive, because in the past, you know this better than anybody, and as a fan, I know this. Sometimes we have a tendency to concede in the earlies and then try to come back afterwards. With that being said, he did try some different solutions. I saw he tried 5 at the back. He used Alvin Jones as a centre back. Some people were saying, talking about Aubrey David. I'm not gonna really talk about the selection process, but he has been trying different tactics. When he wants to go on the offensive, he's not afraid to play 4 in the middle, and have Levi and those guys up front. So, do you think that he has figured out the best way yet, or he's probably still kind of tinkering? What do you think?
It's a good question. What I do know and what I recognize is that he's adaptable.
Mhm.
He was a top player and he played for top teams, so he is used to dominating the ball.
Mhm.
He's used to dominating games, so that is in his makeup to dominate the game. But I think he's clever, intelligent enough to recognize that for you to be able to dominate possession, you need the players to do so. Do we have the players to dominate games possession wise? I don't think so. Personally, I don't think we have that, that personnel to do that. But what we do have is quite a bit of athleticism with Spice and Sealy and obviously Levi. We're quite dynamic in the middle of the pitch with young Daniel Phillips, who has really good energy and a robustness in midfield. And of course, you do have the quality of Molino, who I've mentioned before. It's important that we keep him fit, that he stays fit, and he's gonna have to affect the game. He knows that. You don't have to. He's an experienced player. He knows he's gonna have to be very influential. How are we gonna play? It's gonna be. I think if we're at home, we have to try to dominate the ball. We do have to try to dominate the ball, but it's all just about winning. And I think Dwight as the manager, he has recognized that we really have that pace up front, and maybe it may be best for us to play on the counter attack, to utilize the speed that we have and that pace up front, and then when you get your chance, you have to have the quality to take a chance and the calmness to be able to take the chances that come your way. So it's he'll be thinking about all these things I've just spoken about. He'll be, for sure, he'll be thinking, how should we approach each game? Are we good enough to dominate Curacao? Are we good enough to dominate Bermuda? Can we dominate the ball and be in control of the game that way? Or do we allow them possession and play on the break? So it's a decision that Dwight and the staff have to make, and just utilize the different attributes and qualities we have on our team.
Yeah, and I was very specific with that question because even myself, I mean, when I'm looking at games, I look at a lot of data. We have a nice relationship with SofaScore at EXTV. We always get wonderful information, so they would always send me all the statistics from all the games, and even my mind. I'm sure he has his analysts and his team, on his coaching staff. So, like you said, I'm sure they are trying to figure it out right now, and the most we could do, from the outside, make educated guesses. And then, a lot of fans would reach out to me and ask questions in the comment section. And, the usual fan reactions are, what about our defense? That's our usual go-to in Trinidad. And rightfully so. We did, after the USA game, they did ask questions. But I'm sure he saw that. And to be fair, as you said, we did see some small amounts of progression. But not to harp on that too much, you did highlight, the performances of all the players. Are there any players outside what your call up that you maybe think should probably get a call in or a call up, that from your knowledge that you've seen, or you're generally happy with what you've seen so far? This is not to criticize players, but are there any other players that you've seen that you would like to see on the national setup?
You see, that's one of the areas where I think we are behind the rest of the world in terms of, we are only a small country, and our pool of players is by no means large. So anyone with a Trinidad and Tobago passport or with Trinidad and Tobago heritage, if they have the quality, we should look at them, because all the other countries are doing the same thing. You could see Jamaica, they have quite a really good extensive scouting network to be able to identify players with Jamaican heritage, and we have to adopt that. And not only that, we need to amend our laws, so players could qualify through grandparents. So again, I'm sure that is something that the staff is looking at, in the wider football world, in different countries, in different leagues, trying to identify players that could bring value to the team and really contribute in a positive way. It's something we have to look at, because we're only a small country. Our player pool is not big.
Yeah, correct. And I notice if the big powerful nations do it, so it's only natural that interestingly enough, Trinidadians or Trinbagonians joke about this all the time. There's always a Trini wherever you go. Every single country I went to, thankfully I went to a lot, been grateful for that. But I always found, there's always a Trinidadian element everywhere. If not, there's some kind of connection. Even this guy, Kylie Overy, was a pleasant surprise. And he has an interesting connection with France. So, the possibilities are limitless now, and in a lot of ways the world is smaller now. So, it'll be a shame not to tap into those things and, really get the best out of it. So, I mean, like I said, the most we can do, in this show is, make educated guesses on what could happen. And that's why, I chose this time specifically because it's an in-between period. And to let you all know, this is some of the challenges Dwight York will have to face and his team, because, players, as you said, will be doing their preseason, and there's a little bit of a gap there. So, sometimes people have the impression, Kelvin, that, these players should be training every day, and it just simply doesn't work that way. And we love educating the fans and helping each other out to understand the game. So, it makes it fun for everybody when you have that knowledge and you have insight from people like yourself who has been there and, experienced the highs and lows of qualifying and, actually attaining the glory. And sometimes forget the tactics, forget everything aside, the mental approach needed to get there. Because, that in a lot of ways, people often sweep over that aspect of the game, what you need to get those results, how difficult it is sometimes, the transition from players who haven't played at the global level and all of a sudden you're thrust into the limelight. it's easy as a fan to not understand the human element and how having people like yourself, even on the national team, and you kind of touched on it. I was going to ask that question, but you kind of touched on it already. Having players like Kevin Molino, Jovan Jones, and those experienced players, in a lot of ways, it was like what Dwight York and they were to your squad. Having experienced that, and I'll end it off with this. This is probably the penultimate question. Comparing both people, obviously Dwight York is Manchester United. Like I said, we don't want to compare players in terms of achievements, but in terms of senior players, Kevin Molino and Jovan Jones, and to a small extent Levi because of his experience in Europe, how essential these guys are, not just from a playing perspective, but from behind the scenes and speaking to players, are they for preparing for these games? Because the time is not as long as people think. And, football is very unforgiving. You lose your games and that's how quickly it goes. How essential are they from the mental aspect?
Well, the senior players have a really big role to play. They are the ones who have to set the example for the younger boys and really try to keep them focused and serious and and committed and what have you, and try to show the younger players in his squad what they need to sacrifice for us to be able to be competitive, because we have to be competitive, obviously. So their role is crucial. Marvin Phillip, who is probably the most senior player there in terms of caps. Obviously Kevin, Levi, those players are so important for us, for the group, to keep the group together and to keep the group focused. And I'm sure the staff would depend on these guys to maintain a certain amount of focus during these big games.
Yes. So, folks, if you don't know, just to update you, we are in Group B of the FIFA World Cup qualifying for, next year. Jamaica, Curacao, and Bermuda. Those qualifiers will be starting in a couple months. I would even say, in my mind, I would say tomorrow, but very soon. So we will be doing a lot of analysis. SofaScore will be sending us our data. So I will do a lot of my analysis on extvmedia.com. And of course, we'll have Kelvin, Kenwin, and many others like yourself on the show to, give you insight, because it's very valuable to have your insight. So we always appreciate having you all on. And, folks, will be having our watch-alongs, which were highly successful. It was requested by the fans. Kelvin, the response was very high. People were giving feedback, and it was good to see people from all over the planet, showing their love and passion for the team and, getting to engage. And it shows you how technology has really changed the game now. We could experience the game in a different way. Even if you can't go to the stadium, you could connect. And I'm glad EXTV was that forum for everybody to do that. So I have to thank the fans out there. You all motivated me to do this, and it did really well. The analytics for the channel went up really high. So we will be doing those for for any Trinidad Tobago game, but we'll be definitely doing it for the World Cup qualifiers. Kenwin and I are considering probably doing them together. If not at my studio at the game, of course, I'd like to be at the game. So we'll figure that out. But we'll definitely be doing that. Kelvin, any final thoughts before we wrap this up about that we may have overlooked for this campaign? What do you think?
We just have a responsibility as fans, and I'm a fan. I've made that clear. We need to give as much support as possible, because that support is so important for the players, and the players do feel that energy. They feel that strength from the population, from the country. So that is our responsibility. Now we have to trust the staff, that the staff doing the correct things, and the staff doing their utmost to analyze the opponent and to set us up to play the right way. So we need to support that. And of course, the players, they're doing everything in their power as well, to try to get to the tournament. So all I would say is that, as fans, let us support, let us be there, be nice and vocal, so the guys can really draw that energy from yourselves.
Yes, correct. And then the final, I did plan this question, but it kind of popped in my head. This is from a developmental thing before we go. obviously there's a reality we have to face. You know, there's a possibility we'd all love us as a fan, as you said. You're a fan, I'm a fan. Yes, I'm an analyst, but I could switch both ways if I need to. As Trinbagonians, we want us to get to the World Cup.
Yeah.
However, in the situation, in the scenario that we don't, do you think that, you know, the TTFA should continue with Dwight York and allow? I think they should, but what do you think? Do you think they should allow him time to implement his stuff, his not his stuff, but his methodologies into the team afterwards? Because, you know, sometimes this is football. You understand it better than anybody else. Sometimes there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions after a tournament. Fire the coach. And you know that implementing your philosophies are not as easy as that. And sometimes it is a result-oriented game. It is what it is. But sometimes, you know, a lot of progression gets thrown out the window when you have to keep changing and so on. In the event, hopefully that never happens. The outcome isn't favorable and we don't get there. How long do you think they should continue, and how long do you think they should give him?
I actually think they should be given Dwight 4 to 5 years if they really want to see tangible progress. It takes a long time to get your philosophy across, and even longer when you're an international manager and you have limited time with the team and have a small player pool as well. So I see absolutely no sense whatsoever if we don't qualify that the TTFA would make a change. I cannot see the logic in it, right? Because we're a small country. We don't have a large player pool. We have a coach that's coming. He is trying to change things. We have to trust the manager. We have to trust him, and especially someone as experienced as Dwight, who have won so many things, and Russell as well. And you know, I know I'm calling Dwight, you know, but it's our entire staff. You know, obviously Derek King as well, with a comprehensive knowledge of the local game and what have you. We have to trust them, and we have to trust that they would be perspicacious in the way they are doing things, and trust the entire process. If we don't do that, it's a merry-go-round. You know, we going backwards again, and you know, we're going to try to get someone else in because we're trying to get a quick fix. And history, you know, has shown us that it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't work like that. So, you know, it would be nonsensical to replace the staff if we don't go to the tournament. Nonsensical. He needs to get another Gold Cup. He needs to play more friendlies. He needs to play another set of unity games and what have you. And then you could probably start to see real progress. You could start to see the young boys starting to become better and what have you.
Correct. And I specifically asked that question because that is one of the peeves I had in the past, where sometimes coaches are just simply not given the time. We have this tendency in the past, you know, before tournaments at all levels, not just the senior men, where we would put a coach in very close to a tournament. They don't perform well, and you know, the assessment of these coaches, it's unfair on the coaches, I think. Whether, you know, in Trinidad, people have their opinions on coaches. So I'm glad to hear that from you as well, and it's good for the fans to hear this. So folks, if you have any questions for myself, Kelvin, Kenwin, anybody else, feel free to drop comments in the comment section below. Head over to extvmedia.com. We'll address them as much as possible. We do listen. Your feedback is directly correlated to how we do this show. So you do have a lot to say, and you know, that's something you won't really get anywhere else. Any question you would like answered, you know, we'll probably do a follow-up, and you know, just we listen. So Kelvin, it's been an absolute pleasure, folks. We all hope that Trinidad and Tobago make it to the World Cup. I mean, good luck to all the teams, but of course we are from Trinidad and Tobago and we want our team to do well. So hopefully that scenario of us not qualifying is something we don't ever have to talk about. And we get there, and Kelvin, we all celebrate and have a good time because it is a unifying force. That's one of the few times in Trinidad and Tobago I saw none of the nonsense that we usually talk about had any impact. All people care about is that we qualified. And at one point in time, everybody was proud to be a Trinbagonian. And that's something, that's the power of sport. So with that being said, Kelvin, it's always a pleasure. And folks, I'll see you next time.
My pleasure being here.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching Extra Time TV. Don't forget to like and subscribe.